Are you looking for ways to strengthen your marriage? Would you like to raise children you enjoy being around? Do you long for a peaceful, orderly home that's a blessing to everyone who comes through its doors? Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jennifer Flanders, a Bible-believing, homeschooling mother to 12 and host of the Loving Life at Home podcast. Join me as we discover what God's Word has to say about marriage, motherhood, and minding the things that matter most. Hello, friend. Welcome to episode 84 of Loving Life at Home. Today, I'm finally responding to a question I got several months back from a reader named Donna. She wrote, "I'd love to hear your summary or takeaway of how not to diet but lose weight." I'm pretty sure she wrote this in response to a book I reviewed in my weekly newsletter. That book was entitled How Not to Diet, and it was written by Dr. Michael Greger. My husband and I have read several of Dr. Greger's books. I'll link all three in the show notes today in case you're interested in reading them for yourself. Greger is an MD who has specialized in nutrition and is meticulous about backing up every claim with lots and lots of verifiable statistics and rigorous clinical studies and double-blind, placebo-based trials. His research is over the top impressive, and it makes for especially compelling reading. But it also makes his books incredibly dense. Each of them weigh in at around 600 to 640 or so pages, and they're cram-packed with practical, life-transformative information. Much of the same information is available in bite-sized pieces on his website, which is nutritionfacts.org. I'll link that in the show notes as well, in case you prefer watching 5-minute videos to consuming 600-page tomes. The first Greger book that we read was How Not to Die, in which the author examines 15 leading causes of death in the U.S. and shows how all 15 can be prevented, and in many cases, the damage already done can be reversed by eating a whole foods, plant-based diet. My husband also read some of it aloud to me, and some of it he just summarized. Greger's book, How Not to Age, in which the author goes through every body system, cardiovascular, digestive, neurological, skin, skeletal, etc., and he shows how that same plant-based diet can prevent, reduce, or delay many of the negative effects that we normally associate with aging. And then even more recently, I read Dr. Greger's How Not to Diet. I think his initial plan with that book was to examine all the different diets that have gained popularity these days: Atkins, paleo, low carb, low fat, the caveman diet, those kind of things, and determine which, if any, actually work. But the project grew and expanded to include so much more than that, because the fact is, despite all the fad diets that have been unleashed in our society, the obesity epidemic continues to cause all sorts of related diseases and other health problems. And I can see that from my own life. Anytime I would get serious about exercise or begin meticulously counting every calorie, I could drop 20 or 30 pounds over the course of 6 months. But as soon as I stopped moving my body or tracking my food intake, my weight would slowly start to creep back up until I weighed as much or more than I did to start with. You may not realize it, but last Sunday, May 11th, was not only Mother's Day, but it was also National Eat What You Want Day. There's something to be said about being able to eat your favorite foods without having to worry about how they're going to affect your health or weight, isn't there? That's probably why some people claim that calories eaten on vacation don't count. Unfortunately, that normally isn't true. Vacation calories definitely do count, and if you are not careful, you may come home weighing more than you did when you left. Has that ever happened to you? It used to happen to me quite regularly, although not lately. Cruises historically have been the worst place for packing on extra pounds while vacationing, with all those delicious buffets and fancy dining rooms and every kind of cuisine you could imagine available from sunup to sundown and beyond, and all of it included in the price of your fare. Nevertheless, I went on a cruise last February, ate 3 or 4 times a day, including 5-course dinners with dessert and some of the most delicious culinary creations I have ever tasted, and I felt completely satisfied the entire week that I was on the ship, and I came home 6 pounds lighter than I was when I left. A similar thing happened last month when we went to Washington, D.C. Instead of gaining weight on that vacation, I lost a few pounds, thanks partially to all the walking we did while we were there. I think we averaged around 5 miles a day, give or take a couple. But that's enough about that for now. I'll circle back later to explain how those results were possible. But for now, let's get back to today's question. What is my summary or takeaway of how not to diet and still lose weight? Well, in his book, How Not to Diet, Dr. Greger provides 21 clinically proven tweaks that can help you shed excess pounds by adding a few key ingredients to your diet and by being more careful about the timing of your meals and the order in which you eat your food. Dr. Greger has a free phone app that will help you track your progress on implementing both these 21 tweaks as well as the daily dozen foods that he recommends in his first book that readers should consume every day for optimal health. And I'll see if I can figure out a way to link that app in today's show notes for you. But I also made a handy paper chart of those recommendations for my own personal use. I like paper better than digital, and I'll link a copy of that in the show notes as well. So the foods that are on Greger's Daily Dozen list include beans, 3 servings a day, berries like strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, 1 serving a day. And as I already mentioned in episode 52 on helping your husband make better food choices, I'll include a link for that in the show notes as well, that just 1 small handful of blueberries a day reduces your risk of Alzheimer's by 76%. There's something in the blue pigment that crosses the blood-brain barrier and improves brain health, but you need to eat them separate from any dairy. Don't mix them with your yogurt, or the milk proteins will bind to that blue pigment and prevent its ever getting to your brain. Then next on Greger's Daily Dozen list is other fruits like apples, oranges, grapes, bananas, melon, kiwi. The list goes on and on. Your choice. You just need 3 servings of fruit a day. Also greens, and here I think he means dark leafy greens like spinach or kale or collard greens, 2 servings a day. And next is cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and kale, 1 serving a day. Then 2 servings a day of other vegetables. Flaxseed is also on the list, 1 serving a day, as are nuts and seeds, preferably unsalted, 1 serving a day, like 1/4 of a cup. And herbs and spices, especially turmeric, which is strongly anti-inflammatory, 1 serving a day. You should also get 3 daily servings of whole grains and 60 ounces of water a day, including the water that you use to make black, green, or herbal tea. That would also count to that amount. You need 60 ounces of that a day. Finally, you need to exercise at least once a day. Greger specifies 90 minutes of moderate or 40 minutes of vigorous exercise daily. I've been fulfilling that goal by power walking for about half an hour every day, coupled with rebounding for about 10 minutes. I'm not sure if that qualifies for vigorous exercise, but it's something that I've been able to stay with consistently, so I'm just going to keep doing it and call it good. As you can see, everything on this list, with the exception of exercise, is plant-based. Greger strongly recommends a vegan diet, and the research he presents in his books offers a compelling argument for and details myriad benefits associated with adopting such a diet. Of course, you could just add in that daily dozen on top of what you normally eat, but it represents a whole lot of food, and if you really squeeze in all those recommended servings of all 12 of those foods into your daily diet, you probably aren't going to have the stomach room for much else. But what if you aren't quite ready to go full-on vegan? Are there any steps you can take to lose weight without having to give up meat and cheese? Well, that's where Dr. Greger's 21 tweaks come in. Again, you can track those on his free app or download the expanded chart I made for myself that have both the Daily Dozen and the 21 tweaks together. The 21 tweaks list contains things like adding specific herbs, spices, vinegars, and teas to your diet. 1 is nutritional yeast, 2 teaspoons per day. This is high in beta-glucans, which help facilitate weight loss, and it has a cheesy flavor that I've really learned to like. 2 is cayenne pepper, half a teaspoon a day, helps burn fat. Then cumin, half a teaspoon a day with lunch or dinner, both, has been shown to help lose weight. And black cumin, 1/4 of a teaspoon a day, helps decrease BMI. Ground ginger, 1/4 of a teaspoon a day, helps reduce body weight. Garlic powder, 1/4 of a teaspoon a day, helps reduce body fat. Vinegar, 2 teaspoons a day at every meal, has been shown to help with weight loss. This can be any kind of vinegar, but I usually use apple cider vinegar. You can use it to dress a salad or to flavor lentils, although I usually use red wine vinegar for that job. I'll link my recipe to my lentils in the show notes. And I usually take a shot of something called Winky's Tonic, which is a natural antibiotic which has an apple cider vinegar base. And I usually take that once or twice a day. I'll link that recipe too. Then green tea, you should drink 3 cups of green tea a day. It's best if you wait at least an hour after a meal so as not to interfere with iron absorption. My husband makes me a huge stein of green hot tea first thing every morning while I make his breakfast. I usually guzzle all 3 cups at once about an hour after I finish breakfast, which gives it a little time to cool down first. Then I drink 40 ounces of filtered water with lemon throughout the rest of the day and with my meals. Dr. Greger's remaining tweaks involve careful timing of meals and exercise. His first weight loss tip is to preload before every meal with 2 cups of cold water. Cold water helps boost your metabolism, and it makes you feel more full even before you sit down to eat. Greger also recommends preloading with negative calorie foods like an apple or a light soup or salad. I have an apple with my breakfast every morning, and I always try to eat that first. Studies have also shown that adding half a red delicious apple to your diet a day can extend your life by an average of 4 years. Of course, I say that knowing that the days of my life were ordered and written down by God, and in his book they were numbered before I was ever born, which we read in Psalm 139. But apples are obviously a good choice for health, longevity, and weight management, so I'm going to keep eating them every day anyway. Not only should you preload with negative calorie foods, but you should also front load your calories, according to Greger, which means that you need to eat the bulk of them early in the day. Interestingly, studies have shown that a large meal eaten at breakfast will not cause you to gain as much weight as that exact same meal eaten for dinner. So eat the breakfast like a king, your lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper, and you will be in good stead. Which brings me to Greger's next tweak for weight loss, which is to restrict your eating to a 12-hour window or less. And don't eat anything after 7 p.m. in the evening. I think 7 p.m. was chosen to allow a good 3 hours to digest before you turn in for the night. But since my husband and I often go to bed by 8 o'clock, I try to get all of my eating done by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's worked very well for me, especially since I usually start breakfast about 6 a.m. and what I affectionately call my second breakfast about 8 or 9. The first breakfast consists of that apple I told you about, plus half a cup of berries, a fourth of a cup of mixed nuts, and 2 pieces of avocado toast made with Ezekiel bread, which is flourless bread. It's made with sprouted grains, and it's sprinkled with cayenne pepper, black pepper, turmeric, and ginger. That's the same breakfast I make for my husband, minus the toast on days that he has to work because he doesn't feel like he has time to chew all that fiber. But second breakfast for me includes a sliced white button mushroom sauteed in olive oil with fresh onions and garlic, red pepper flakes, and either spinach, kale, or collard greens. I think I have a recipe for that one on my website too. I will link that in the show notes if I can find it. It's so yummy. I really crave this when we're traveling and I have to do without it. So normally every day at about 9 o'clock or so, I make myself that dish as well. Another of Greger's weight loss tips is to stay hydrated, which equates to 9 cups of unsweetened beverages a day for women and 13 cups for men. But this tip will be automatically taken care of if you drink those 3 cups of green tea and preload with 2 cups of water before every meal. Then the rest of Greger's tweaks include enjoying undistracted meals. Don't eat mindlessly while you're watching TV or playing on your phone. That's a big no-no. Really slow down and savor the food. In fact, studies show that increasing the time the food is in your mouth can result in a lower caloric intake. So choose bulkier, harder, chewier foods and take smaller bites and really extend that meal time to at least 20 minutes and chew every bite extremely well. Then for best results, time your exercise for optimal benefit by waiting 6 hours after your last meal, which would argue for exercising in the early morning before breakfast for most of us, unless you have diabetes, which my husband has type 2 diabetes, in which case it's better for your blood sugar if you exercise immediately after your meal. So I usually just exercise with him after lunch or dinner so we can do it together, or after breakfast on weekends or on his days off. That's 16 tweaks if you're counting. The last 5 are miscellaneous tips that don't really fit neatly into either of those other 2 categories. They include 17, deflour your diet. When you're trying to lose weight, you should lay off refined flour in favor of intact whole grains. My go-to sources of grain are, like I said, Ezekiel bread and also sprouted corn tortillas and air-popped popcorn, which is technically a whole grain. Weigh yourself twice a day is another tip. First thing in the morning and again right before you go to bed. Dr. Greger says regular self-weighing is considered crucial for long-term weight control. Then number 19, set specific goals, something Dr. Greger calls inflammation intentions, and be consistent about them every day until they become a habit. Then pick a new one and start working on that new habit. Number 20 is get sufficient sleep, at least 7 or 8 hours a night. Less than that can really pack on the pounds. It spikes your cortisol levels and doesn't allow your body to properly heal and repair itself overnight. So be sure you're getting that sleep. And the last tweak is the number 21 is the only one that I haven't applied myself, at least not yet. And that is to sleep in a mild Trendelenburg position, which means you're sleeping with your body tilted head down by about 6 degrees. You can accomplish this by raising the post at the foot of your bed by about 8 inches. That causes more flow to be pulled to your heart, which encourages it to release a fat-burning hormone. Please note that doing this is not recommended for anybody with heart or lung problems or issues with your brain or eyes or acid reflux, something my husband struggles with, which is one reason I've not pursued that particular tweak. And the other is that I just think having the foot of our massive wooden bed raised 8 inches would not be very good for the bed frame, and it would not look as aesthetically pleasing as a level mattress does, and so I have just resisted the implementation of that particular tweak. Of course, applying all these tweaks will only get you so far. Don't expect your excess pounds to just fall off overnight. But if you are consistent about doing these things, you'll likely see the weight slowly start to come off. I finished How Not to Diet back in November, but it took me a couple of months to work my way through it. So by the time I had finished the final chapter, I'd already begun implementing many of the tweaks suggested in the book as soon as I learned about them. And what's more, I was already seeing some benefit to the tune of about a pound of weight loss every week to 10 days. But then after I got a diagnosis of breast cancer in mid-December, I really got motivated to revamp my diet and get rid of that excess weight I'd been carrying around for so many years. I talk about my reaction to the big C at length in episode 70, Unwrapping Cancer for Christmas, which I will link in the show notes. But basically, after some serious fasting and lots of prayer, I cut out all refined sugar, refined flour, seed oils, ultra-processed foods, and all meat and dairy, although I did have a little chicken when I was healing after my lumpectomy because my husband thought I probably needed the extra protein during my convalescence to recover faster. But guess what? For nearly 6 months now, I've eaten a strictly plant-based diet. And most days, that includes all 12 of Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen and 20 of the 21 tweaks, everything except sleeping on that slanted mattress. That means I'm eating a ton of delicious, vitamin-packed, fiber-rich, nutrient-dense foods every single day, and I am loving it. I get to eat as much as I want, and I feel completely satisfied. My sugar addiction is gone. My junk food cravings are gone. The indigestion is gone. The roller coaster blood sugars are gone. The fatigue is gone. I have all sorts of energy. I feel fantastic. And I've lost 60 pounds, which means I'm now back to the same weight I was when I met my husband, all without counting a single calorie. As you may already know, I send out a weekly newsletter called Flanders Family Freebies, filled with all sorts of fun, free resources on Wednesday of every week. If you don't already subscribe but would like to, I'll include a link in the show notes along with the link to the issue I'm fixing to tell you about, if I can figure out a way to do that. Anyway, one of the most popular newsletter issues I ever sent in terms of open rates and click-through percentages was one I entitled How to Eat What You Want and Stay Healthy. So I know that topic resonates among my readers, probably because most of them are women, and for a lot of us, the older we get, the lower our metabolism seems to sink. I have a very dear friend, Abby Halberstadt. You may already know her, as she's written 2, soon-to-be 3 best-selling books and hosts a popular podcast called M is for Mama. I'll put a link to all of that in today's show notes. Anyway, this is a friend who also has a lot of children, 10 to be exact, including 2 sets sets of twins, and she's always stayed far more physically active than I've ever even dreamed of being. Well, when she turned 40, her sweet mom, who is also a personal friend of mine, told her very matter-of-factly that 40 is the age when it becomes nearly impossible to lose weight, and that she shouldn't be surprised that the baby weight from her last set of twins didn't come off as easily as it did when she was younger. Well, I remember Abby feeling mildly offended by that conversation. Of course, I sincerely hoped for my friend that such a projection wouldn't be true for her. After all, she had been incredibly diligent in the past to teach fitness classes all through her pregnancies and jump right back in as soon as possible after delivery. But I'm as near to Abby's mother's age as I am to hers. So on one hand, I was still close enough to my 40s at the time to want to encourage my friend that yes, with enough resolve, you can defy the odds. But I was also close enough to my 70s to know that willpower can only go so far, and that what her mother said was actually true, and something that Abby herself has now conceded as well. It is much harder to lose weight once you get older. That truth, coupled with the fact that until these past 6 months, I've seldom ever exercised consistently, is how at my heaviest, I wound up weighing 90 pounds more than I did when I got pregnant with my first child. In my earliest days of mothering, breastfeeding alone was enough to melt that baby fat right off of me. By the time my first was about 3 months old, I'd already bounced back to my pre-pregnancy weight without any extra effort on my part to do so, and not restricting any calories whatsoever. Such is the metabolism of youth. When my husband and I were in our 20s, we'd go to work out at President's Health Spa. I don't know if they're still around even anymore, but it was like the forerunner of Planet Fitness and Crunch. And then after a 30 or 45-minute workout, we would drive straight across the street to Dunkin' Donuts and sit in the parking lot splitting an assorted dozen, 6 for him and 6 for me. And we still lost weight in the process. Fast forward a few years, and it became harder and harder to shed those pounds that I put on during pregnancy, until I finally had to accept the fact that for me now, permanent weight loss is only achievable with permanent lifestyle change, as Dr. Greger is fond of saying. So, is there a way to eat what you want and maintain a healthy weight? Well, technically, yes, there is. That's how I was able to finally shed those 60 extra pounds. And it's how I was able to go on a cruise and come home lighter than when I left, even with eating as much food as I could hold 3 or 4 times a day the whole week we were on the ship. The first secret lies in staying active, which for me currently means walking a mile or more a day, plus rebounding on my mini trampoline multiple times daily, as I mentioned before. Of course, it's possible to out-eat any exercise program, which is why you also need the second secret to staying healthy while eating what you want, and that entails changing what you want. Here, the cards are really stacked against us, though, because big food has spent decades and invested literally millions into figuring out how to make junk food just as addictive as they possibly can. And they found the precise combination of sugar, salt, and fat to make it nearly impossible to stop with just one, whether you're talking about potato chips or jelly donuts or pieces of candy or French fries or sips of soda. And have you ever noticed that no matter how much you gorge on ultra-processed foods like that, you never feel satisfied? That's because you're just consuming empty calories. But once you manage to break that addiction, whether you give it up cold turkey or you gradually wean off by adding more and more wholesome foods to your diet, you'll discover an amazing variety of fresh fruits and vegetables that are absolutely cram-packed with vitamins and minerals and fiber, but so low in calories that it's virtually impossible to overindulge. Your stomach simply can't hold enough raw carrots and kale and cabbage to get too many calories eating that kind of stuff. Then add in whole grains and legumes and a little extra virgin olive oil, and you have a full, delicious diet that nurtures good health and boosts immunity and reduces inflammation and supports your gut microbiome, instead of hijacking your taste buds to drive profits for the processed food industry. So give that a try. Put the whole food, plant-based way of eating to the test and see if you don't feel better, more energetic, and have an easier time controlling your weight without ever having to count a single calorie.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you have a question you'd like to hear covered on this podcast, message me on Instagram at Flanders_family or contact me through my website, lovinglifeathome.com. Before you go, if you've been encouraged by something you've heard on the show, do me a favor and forward the link to a friend or head over to Loving Life at Home on Apple iTunes to subscribe and leave a written review of the show. Your doing so will help others find me so they can listen too. Until next time, I pray the Lord will bless your efforts to build a loving home life centered on Him.